Hello and welcome to s-factor-sam. My name is Samuel Ray. What does the S in s-factor stand for? Well, you'll have to watch to the end to find out. So this is Art of Rally, one of my favorite racing games of all time. Obviously it is about rally, which in my opinion is the greatest motorsport and test of driving skill in the world. Now it's not a simulator, so it's not trying to be super realistic, but it's realistic enough. There are damage systems, there's things like weight transfer, grip and traction, and all sorts of stuff like that that adds some depth to it. What I've been doing is I've been challenging myself. So this is a game that is a rare instance of actually making me want to leaderboard chase a bit. I'm not usually the type to do that growing up, but I've decided that I would aim for top 50 percentile completion on a weekly rally, and I attained that. You can look back to see that, and now I'm aiming for top 10%, because when I got that top 50 percentile, I actually broke into top 30 percentile. So yeah, I'm aiming for top 10. So let's see how things go. It's 4 stages with a repair stop in the middle to repair any damage that you accrue, because it does affect your performance negatively. And here we go. So this week's challenge put us in an old school, like, think vintage Mini Cooper. One of the only 2 front-wheel drive cars in the entire game. And in the lowest class of historic rally. So both of them exist in the lowest power class, meaning you're not going to see the most blazing fast speeds. However, front-wheel drive is a very different beast to drive in terms of car control than the likes of all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. I would say all-wheel drive is probably the best for rally. You get the strengths of both front-wheel and rear-wheel to an extent. The highest level of acceleration and control, honestly. Front-wheel drive, much less in terms of power, and it makes it harder to corner because of understeer. So when you're trying to turn, and then you put down the throttle, the car wants to straighten itself out. Now that can be great when you're a newer driver in general, and that's why many consumer cars run front-wheel drive, because it is just easier to control understeer than it is to control oversteer. In the case of rally, it makes it a bit harder to take those corners at speed. Because if you try to initiate a power slide and then you put the power down, it really can't power slide because the acceleration cancels out the slide. So the only ways to really do it are to lift the throttle, which gives you more oversteer. Then you got to point the nose where you want to go, and then you can only accelerate after the apex. So yeah, didn't start off too strong. Top 80th percentile on that first stage. So now the next one is longer. We're really gonna have to pick it up to see if we can get to that top 10%. Now honestly, as soon as you get that low in the performance, early on, it becomes darn near impossible to hit top 10%. Or top 20 percentile, really. But not over until the final race. It's not over till the final car crosses the finish line, so we're gonna keep pushing. But this time I'm going for more precision. Trying to slide a bit less. That way I can get onto the power sooner and keep that momentum going. And that's the thing about small lightweight cars like the Mini Cooper. They disprove the idea that front-wheel drive is not fun or cannot be fun. or you might say is anti-driving, as a certain very high-profile race car driver put it. As long as the car is lightweight and has a decent power-to-weight ratio, you can have a lot of fun. And you can actually perform quite well with it. As you can tell here, I've been trying to be a bit easier into the turns. Now, I kind of overcooked it there, but it wasn't so bad. But I've been trying to slow down earlier so that then I can get into the turn and then get onto the power again. So this is a situation where go slow and smooth, because smooth is fast when it comes to the turns. It's not as flashy to look at, but when you're driving front wheel drive, you're rewarded for smoothness. That's the thing. Like, even in the old days of the mountain pass racers, the Civic Type R of the time was able to do quite well, despite being a front wheel drive platform. And that's because the people who mastered it mastered the art of smooth throttle control and left foot braking. So by shifting weight to the front in the middle of a turn, you can actually force some more rotation. And you do that while still on the throttle a little bit. You smoothly lift up off the throttle a bit and apply left foot braking, and then you go back onto the throttle smoothly, and that allows you to maintain rotation and power output. So there are ways to do it. This just takes a little more precision and control to do well in front wheel drive, interestingly enough. So, made a little bit of an improvement. Top 70 percentile. Not a whole lot better though. So, now we got the longest stage thus far, and it's rainy conditions on gravel. So, we're gonna have to get some repairs and then really just send it. Now, I am running a mod that, well, first, I didn't take any damage in those first two stages, so all we're gonna do is clean off the car to reduce drag a bit. Now, I am running a mod that increases the weather effects. So, when it's raining, you get more rain. And the rain can kind of go sideways, actually, with wind and with, your own velocity, making it appear to go sideways. So it adds some more visual flair and actually makes it feel faster. I really like it. And then I also have a mod that creates, in darker conditions, creates that initial D-style light trails from the brakes when you're applying regular brakes. Now, it doesn't do that when you apply handbrake, only true brakes. Like brake pedal. And none of these impact the actual driving physics or my control performance. They're solely visual mods. I just like, because I feel like it really enhances the visual flair of this game, which already has a minimalistic art style, kind of low poly-esque. So why not lean more into environmental weather effects and stuff? Now, we've run into another limitation. It's rare that we get a long straight like that. In fact, we hadn't encountered any in the first two stages, but this car is only 4 gears, which heavily limits its top speed. As you can see, I was hitting the rev limiter in top gear, which doesn't happen nearly as often in more modern cars with 5 or 6 gears. So this set of stages is definitely more about controlling the corners, which is an interesting combination considering front-wheel drive. Understeer can make some of the corners a bit harder, and it tricks you into wanting to take them fast, but in reality you need to take them smooth. And then you add on top of that wet gravel, which not as bad as, in my opinion, not as bad as wet tarmac or wet dirt. I feel like those are much slipperier. Wet gravel, in real life, water kind of sinks into the gravel, so it's not going to affect it as much. But when the ground is wet, you actually do lose some traction, some grip, and the puddles do negatively affect your acceleration as well, by forcing some tire spin. So, like I said, this game is just realistic enough to be have depth, right, for skill expression, without being so realistic that it starts to take away the fun. Like a lot of the more simulators kind of threaten to do in varying circumstances from sim to sim. But in this case, it forced me to have to decelerate much further back from the turn than I normally would, and to apply much more brake than I initially wanted to. See, because it's really hard to, you're not going to come to a full stop as easily when the ground is wet. It doesn't matter what kind of terrain you're driving on. Now, one thing about Rally that you have to really ingrain into your head is that cuts are okay in some spots. Now, this game, I'm not a big fan of the way this game handles not penalizing like overzealous cuts to the point where it can become cheating, because they have certain corners where if you try to cut, you'll just hit a reset zone, and that tacks on a 5-second penalty plus brings you to a full stop. So in reality, it ends up effectively being more like a penalty of 7 to 8 seconds, depending on the torque output of your car that you're driving. But it's hard to know sometimes which corners you can and can't cut, since you don't have anyone reading out pace notes to you like you would in real Rally. Obviously, the further back camera lets you see further ahead. And another thing you need to do in this game, and we have an impact with the wall, because of course, fortunately, it spun us around and I just got to keep going. I would rather take a 360 spin than a 180 any day. 180 is worse. So back to what I was saying is a trick to do when you're playing this: don't look at your car. Look much further ahead. Just like in real driving, you don't want to look at the road right in front of you, or the car is right in front of you. You want to look more towards the horizon. So do that in this, and that allows you to see, you want to look at the road ahead of you, essentially. That way you can kind of plan your upcoming moves and your position into each turn. Because you don't want to attack the turn like I did there. You want to start from the outside and go to the inside. Use the full track, so to speak. It comes from circuit racing, but it does apply here too. Start wide, go in tight into the apex, or in some cases start wide and then cut through with as much momentum as you can. And there we go, top 40th percentile performance on that stage. Much better than the previous two. And now we're back on gravel, but it's not raining, and it's a 6-mile stage. So we're gonna have to just go flat out. I even said that to myself. Just gotta go Colin McRae flat out and see if I can really pull out a good result. Started off a little weak, got a little better, then made a big jump up in performance. So you just gotta go strong. Gotta end strong. Just put it all out there, and what happens, happens. And there, as you can see, I saw a downhill turn, so I decided to make use of that inertia and gravity to make an actual power slide. A rare situation where you can do so in a front-wheel drive car. And I think driving in the rain and doing as well as I did kind of unlocked my ability a bit until that happened. I got a little overzealous, so now I gotta really push it. Going uphill makes acceleration a bit harder too. So on the hairpins, you have to take it slower and smoother so as to keep a little throttle on. And you can see that wobble there, right? Every time I try to put the power down while going into a turn, the car wants to straighten itself out so much and then understeer. But at this stage I have a lot more wide sweeping turns, except for these really tight turns like that where the understeer really bites me in the butt. But I still avoided resets, which is good, because resets are the worst enemy. Put the rev limiter, and we're going airborne. and I hit the ground uneven, which caused me to lose control big time and forced a reset upon me. Hate it. Hate to see it. Honestly, it looks cooler. It really looks cooler to have your foot on the throttle, but what you want to do on a jump, you gotta let off the throttle when you hit the ground, right before you hit the ground. That way you can maintain better control. It kind of depends, though, I think, on how level you are when you hit the ground, because if you go front first, you know, having your momentum cut will just force more weight onto the front, I should say, and that'll force the rear end to kick out and you can spin out. So it really just depends on how level you are with the ground. If you land flat, then yeah, you can ease up on the throttle a little bit, especially if you're driving rear wheel drive, because the front wheels are still the ones that do the steering. But you don't want all the weight to go so heavily onto the front, because then the rear will just swing out. Which is what happened to me there. Kind of landed a little sideways and just leaned off the left. So now I saw elevation change, saw that we were starting to go downhill there, so I had to ease up off the throttle at the top of the hill so as not to launch myself off a bit, especially since there was a turn right at the hill. It would have caused me to go way off stage. So despite the reset and the issues with a couple of those turns, I actually got a top 45 percentile, which means that a lot of other people struggled with that stage. Probably worse than me. So yeah, now we're going to see the final results. So time to see how well I did compared to everyone else who attempted this weekly rally, because I look at the results after the reset takes effect. So no more attempts can be made. This is the final permanent result. Here we are. Top 45 percentile. Not too bad. Honestly, I thought I was going to do a lot worse than that because of how poorly I did in the first two stages, right? But I managed to pull a couple of good results at the end and got myself up to 45 percentile. So yeah, nothing much to complain about there. That's for sure. So to answer the question at the beginning of the video, what does the S in S-factor stand for? I would say it stands for stable, because we're starting to get stable top 50 percentile finishes. So yeah, with that, I'm going to call it here. This has been Samuel Ray on S-factor-sam. And if you enjoyed that, then make sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen, because you'll probably enjoy that too. All right, I will see you next time. You have a great one. Later.